Hello to the one person watching this video, Mrs. Gamble. So in this video, we are going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of globalization. This video is going to consist of 3 case studies and 4 issues surrounding this topic. So, without further ado, let's get into this. So now I want to talk about the first case study, which is the good of globalization. And in my opinion, that would be transportation and the economy. So this is a process we call containerization. And in 1956, this guy named Malcolm McLean, he came up with this idea. And he managed to take 58 trailers and put them on a ship, and then it got transported. And ever since then, people have been using this and calling it containerization. So this one idea of containerization not only made transportation more effective and more efficient, but also made the economy and business just skyrocket. So with the transportation of goods being more efficient and the economy going up, this is most certainly the good of globalization, in my opinion, of course. So now that leads us to the second case study of this video, the bad of globalization. Now, in my opinion, this one is the loss of habitat and the taking over of land in general. Now, this is sadly still an issue that's going on to this day with the extinction of species and just climate change. Now, if you want globalization to expand and want things to be more efficient, that means taking some risks or some moves that wouldn't be very good for the earth or just our population. That like making roads and making just these massive vehicles and whatnot that really don't do any good for earth and whatever. Not to mention the factories and the nuclear plants and the massive cities that we're making that just completely destroy our ecosystem. So not only are we destroying our ecosystem, but we are also destroying our hope that our future just population can have a healthy and sustainable environment to live in. So that's why, in my opinion, that this is the bad of globalization. But now I'm going to also talk about issue 3. Now, economic and environmental globalization are both connected because we are using the environment to boost our economy, and the environment is basically just being destroyed now because we're running out of sustainable options to do. Will we see sustainable prosperity for it all? No, unless we change our habits and come up with a more eco-friendly way to make money. Now, this idea of globalization is masterfully showed in Avatar, which, if you want a good idea and grasp on this, I recommend go seeing that movie, and you can get a better idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, so now we're getting into the third case study of this, the ugly part of globalization. Now, when I first heard this, I was like, the ugly part, like, what does this mean? But then I thought about it some more, and I'm like, like, a part of globalization that makes me feel gross inside, and that is the slave trade. Now, the Atlantic slave trade took place in the 15 to 1900s, and it's where people from Africa were basically captured and sold all across the world to places such as Europe, South America, the Caribbean, and America. Now, obviously, this is not good at all, as the people who were selling them were Europeans, and they were like, this is fine because, they have different skin color, and that's clearly racism. And the sad thing is, the economy was making a lot of money from this, and that is unfortunate. So this dumb act of racism is why I chose this as the ugly of globalization. And now I'm going to talk about issue 2, which relates to this. Now, POCs were massively affected negatively by this, and even though people were making lots of money and the economy was booming, people were suffering, and that should never ever be an issue in our society. Now, for the final section of this video, I'm going to be talking about issue 4. Don't worry, issue 1 is going to be talked about in my 3 paragraphs. I think that we as a people should embrace globalization, but only in a certain context. Now, Yes, I do know that there are lots of negatives for globalization, especially in the past, such like slavery and just the destruction of ecosystems and climate change and just mass production of waste and whatnot. But I think that if we take a step in the right direction and come up with more humane ways for workers to work and more eco-friendly ways that the environment can sustain itself, then I personally think that this that globalization should be embraced in that way. But how it currently is, not so much, but I do think that if the right leaders are in power, then yes, we can do it. Alright, that's it for this video. Thank you, Miss Gamble, for watching this very poorly worded video. Thanks for being such a great teacher and keep up what you're doing.